The argument before us today, to fire or not to fire, that is the question. I've been asked to argue the position of why the Red Cross employee should have been fired for the Twitter faux pas. How do we approach this problem? For the sake of the company, one has to take emotion out of this. I know from experience people working together in a nonprofit circle often form a deep friendship and bond, and this doesn't make this decision to fire easy. The American Red Cross is a respectable institution, but I'm not sure they acted as such in this situation. The question is not what is good for the employee, but what is good for the company's charitable purpose. Better decisions should have been made to protect the brand. In my closing argument, I will show exactly why the employee should have been terminated. In an earlier post, Cassandra mentioned 3 main points on why the employee shouldn't have been fired. She started with speaking about how the mishap turned into good. This is a dangerous philosophy, in my opinion, for any reason for a person and or a company to live by. Though this situation isn't as bad as some of the recent online jokes gone bad or tweets that were racially insensitive, this still is a dangerous way to do business, especially if you are a nonprofit organization like the American Red Cross. What if it had been racially insensitive, but the employee or company could figure out how to make it positive? Would you still do it? Absolutely not. And so you cannot use this as a basis of your argument. She also mentioned that the tweet got taken down immediately, almost as if to say no harm, no foul. Again, this is sort of the same philosophy we initially heard about the tweet turning into a positive. I would say the American Red Cross is very fortunate to have caught this before the public shaming police got a hold of this, as described in John Ronson's book, where he describes the new age shaming comes not from people in town squares with torches and pitchforks, but with the outcry of people on social media behind a screen and the click of a mouse. Miss Wong and her company are fortunate to have stayed the public execution of her reputation and career. Should this have happened, the Red Cross would have had no choice but to release her from her employment. What will they do the next time a less than offensive tweet causes the kind of outcry Ronson speaks of? Policy should have been set and the employee released. Her third reason for not firing the employee was that it was just an honest human mistake. I previously wrote that this is hard to argue, and in many ways, I agree with Cassandra on this particular point. However, the presupposition is that because it was an honest mistake, the employee shouldn't have been fired. She argues, according to Jason Fall's blog, the lines are so blurred that the employee shouldn't be fired for these reasons. Again, the honest mistake idea falls short when you consider the honest mistakes of workers that have cost lives and other serious issues for other companies. Who should set the standard on what is fireable and what is not in this age of blurred lines and this idea and philosophy of honest mistakes? Honest mistakes have been wreaking havoc on the public since the beginning of time. So why should she have been fired? I will contend that this is a very difficult position for me to be in. So we must take emotion out of the equation, as I said earlier, and look at several tenets of philosophy to guide our argument and decision to fire the employee. First, I think you have to look at the purpose of the charitable organization. Cassandra and I both argue this, but we see this a little different way. In her opening remarks, she spoke of the charitable purpose of the American Red Cross, that it has always been about humanity. The Red Cross was born of a desire to bring assistance without discrimination to the wounded on the battlefield endeavors in its international and national capacity, to prevent and alleviate human suffering wherever it may be found. This entire definition and the principle I speak of is found on their own website. And when it comes to an employee speaking about getting absolutely drunk, and then a social media manager joking about taking the keys, kind of shining a joke onto drunk driving, I think they've given up the very principles of alleviating human suffering. And I quote, wherever it may be found, in this case on their very own company Twitter account. The reason I believe that it was in poor taste to make a joke about taking the keys is because the enormous issue that we have in the United States with alcohol impaired driving episodes. Every 90 seconds, a person is injured in a drunk driving crash. This according to the National Highway Traffic Safety and Administration. I would also contend that it was an irresponsible use of the company's equipment. Yes, the lines are blurred, but if a company doesn't set some lines, there will never be lines. Either the employee tweeted using Hootsuite from a company computer, or she tweeted on the company time for her personal account to post after work. Either way, it shows that she posted while being at work since Hootsuite was being used. Furthermore, if the tweet is bad enough to take down, then it is probably a fireable offense. I think the most compelling argument I'd like to give is industry standards. Obviously, the Red Cross doesn't have any policies on this, so we have to look at the current industry standards. According to Robin Medell, she gives 3 social media mistakes that could get you fired or keep you from getting hired to another company. She speaks of careless posting. According to her website, in 2014 social recruiting survey, 66% of recruiters reconsidered candidates because of spelling and grammar errors in their social profiles. Medell also talks about dirt about employees or the company. This goes without saying, so I'll move right to her third point, which is, I think, the most important here, and this is my entire basis of my argument, is the employee failed to control her digital identity. It is not only what you post, but what you remove from your social media profiles that make a difference, according to Jennifer Lee Magus, Vice President at Magus Media Consultants, LLC. She notes that in today's digital age, you are your own brand. So not only did Ms. Wong embarrass the company, she embarrassed herself as a social media manager. If in doubt about what to keep and what to remove from your social media profile, Magus suggests considering a simple test. If you wouldn't say it to 60,000 people, don't put it online. And this is where my argument gains ground, because I believe that the Twitter post got taken down early enough that it didn't cause the issue that it could have. But I agree with Magus. You have to ask yourself the question, would you have said that kind of thing to 60,000 people? And I'm probably more talking about the social media manager's cavalier attitude to drinking and driving. And there is simply no argument to suggest that they would have been okay standing in an arena of 60,000 people saying these sort of things. When it comes to these policies, it is solely to protect the integrity of the company. And as a director of a nonprofit organization, I understand fully the public is going to hold me to a higher standard. The American Red Cross was not held to the higher standard many of its supporters would have hoped. Employees have to know that their digital identity can be compromised. And when it is compromised, it has a direct effect on compromising the charitable purpose of the organization. Maybe the biggest reason Gloria Wong should have been fired, or at least taken it upon herself to step down, is the Red Cross brand suffered. Even though it seems like they may have weathered the storm or not, and even gained money through it, I do believe it still suffered. The reason I know this is this very project that we're working on. We have spent countless hours arguing and talking about employee faux pas on Twitter and very little about the great work the American Red Cross is actually doing. So in closing, I actually want to support the Red Cross and do what they should have done in the first place. Instead of using gimmicks and cliche, they should have just encouraged people to keep giving blood and keep donating to the great cause that is their organization. I mean, consider this. Every 2 seconds, someone in the U.S. needs blood. 36,000 units of red blood cells are needed every day in the United States. A single car accident victim can require as many as 100 pints of blood. And though 38% of us in the U.S. are eligible to donate, Actually, less than 10% actually do each year. I'm excited to announce this weekend, Saturday, April 2nd, at the Nomad Space in Melbourne, at our headquarters at 1050 Cypress Avenue, the big red bus from the Central Florida One Blood will be there all day. This project reminded me of the value of protecting the brand, and if I was to argue the against position, I can still support the organization's charitable giving. And so I want to do that by encouraging all my classmates who aren't in Melbourne but can go and give blood at a local blood center wherever they live. And I hope many of them will do so in the coming months. Listen, I do not take the position that Gloria Wong needs to be vilified or publicly shamed, and maybe Cassandra is correct that this was just a simple human mistake and she shouldn't be fired. I just wish the Red Cross would have taken a different approach than teaming up with a beer company and taking too light of a position with drinking and driving by posting about taking away the keys like it was no big deal. The Red Cross is an American institution, and I expect them to be as professional as such an institution should be.